Rivers have been a source of beauty and inspiration since time immemorial. When you look at a river, perhaps from the window of an airplane, what do you see? It looks like an artery that has carved its way through a landscape of mountains, forests, and plains, eventually pouring into the sea. But look more closely, and you will see that the rivulets, streams, and tributaries that feed the river integrate all of these landscape features. Really, the river system encompasses the entire landscape. And it is the dynamic interaction of rivers with their landscapes that gives them life. So, for the next 50 minutes or so, let's talk about rivers as life support systems, both for human communities and the web of creatures dependent upon fresh water. Indeed, this is a conversation about one of the most important foundations for sustaining life on this planet. We're talking about how that vitality can be restored to the many rivers where it has been lost. Our clever species has been, from the beginning, a river species, for sustenance, transportation, waste disposal, and natural barriers from neighboring tribes. Rivers have been the cradle of civilizations. Today, the rivers of the world work extremely hard for humans. The dams, levees, and diversion works that have harnessed rivers are monuments to human ingenuity. These dams feed a hungry planet. Modern irrigation systems are a key part of the green revolution that has improved the diets and kept food production ahead of the burgeoning human population in most areas of the world. And yet food scarcity is still a big problem in parts of Africa and Asia, and more dams are needed to help grow additional food. Many of these dams capture floods. Floods still claim more lives than all other natural disasters combined: fire, earthquakes, and hurricanes. But even if your house is right next to a river, dams and levees probably allow you to sleep confidently through even the more intense rains you have known. Yet, eventually, a more severe flood will occur than these structures can control. It is only a matter of time. And in more than 160 countries of the world, it is likely that your power comes from dams. Indeed, if you live in Scandinavia or Canada, most of your power comes from that source. In fact, hydropower currently provides 95% of renewable energy supplies around the world, because it is the most affordable alternative to power plants that burn carbon-based fuels, such as coal and oil, which are heating our planet to crisis levels. And much more hydropower is in prospect, because there are still many areas of rural Africa, Asia, and Latin America that do not yet have electricity at all. How many dams are there in the world today? The number may surprise you. If we just consider the large dams, those that are over 15 meters or 50 feet high, 100 years ago there were virtually none. 60 years ago, there were 4,500, and 3/4 of these were in the industrialized countries. Today, there are almost 50,000 large dams, and 2/3 of these are in Asia, Latin America, and Africa. If we look at the dam intensity of these countries, it looks like this. Half of the large dams are found in a single country, China, the world's premier hydraulic society. China has built the first, most, and biggest dams of any nation, and it is just getting started. Here you see the world's hardest working rivers and where they are located. They include the Mississippi, Colorado, Columbia, the Central Valley of California, the Paraná and São Francisco, the Murray-Darling, the Yangtze, Yellow and Pearl, the Krishna, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Orange, Niger and Limpopo, and the Danube, Elbe, and Rhone. And the era of dam building is far from over. To be sure, in North America and Europe, there is a movement to dismantle a few dams, mostly those that have become obsolete, dangerous, or blocked migration of migratory fishes. But these are only a handful. Meanwhile, another 1,800 major dams are under construction around the world right now. China intends to double its large hydropower dams. Many more dams are planned in India, Brazil, Turkey, and on the Mekong River in Southeast Asia. Africa, too, will be a hotspot of new development because it so badly needs the food production and power that dams provide. And the new era of dams will be primarily for power generation, in contrast to the current legacy of large dams, most of which are for irrigation. But working our rivers so hard has exacted a heavy toll. Today, these freshwater ecosystems are the world's most endangered. more so than tropical forests, more so than the oceans. In fact, the rate of freshwater species extinctions is 8 times higher. Best estimates are that more than 1/3 of the species that depend upon fresh water for their survival are today in serious decline. Not since the age of the dinosaurs has there been such a massive die-off. This impoverishment of the planet is a crisis for all who live upon it, or ever will. All the demands we place on rivers contribute to this crisis. Man-made contaminants have taken a heavy toll. Overharvesting of fishes for food is an increasing problem, to be sure, but the greatest cause is the physical alteration of these rivers by dams, diversions, and levees. Over the last 100 years, we have transformed the rivers of this planet through these massive engineering works, the largest man-made objects on the planet. And they are built to last a very long time. We could easily regard them as permanent. And we might well think also that the damages they have caused are also permanent, and that we can never get back to free-flowing rivers again. Well, that's true to some extent. The dams themselves will remain, while their reservoirs will eventually fill with silt, as the mountains slowly but inexorably erode into rivers. But if we turn around and look forward into the future, we can envision changing the operation of these dams to restore some semblance of the natural flows and ecological processes in the downstream environment. But this work is technically challenging, global in scale, and must begin now if we are to learn how to site, design, and operate the next generation of dams before they become literally etched in stone. We can partially restore these rivers by changing how dams are operated, when and how they release water. To understand how dams are reoperated to restore healthier conditions downstream, let's look at how a pristine, undeveloped river functions. The highlands collect the rains and snows, which run down to the tributaries and converge with the landscape from steep mountain canyons through natural lakes to broad alluvial valleys and their wetlands to the mouth of the river. We can depict the natural flow dynamics in a hydrograph. This is just a graphical representation of the changes in the magnitude of the river flow over the course of a year. On the vertical axis, you see the variability as peaks, representing floods, and valleys representing low flow periods, and across the horizontal axis, you see the months of the year. The flows of natural rivers vary greatly from season to season and from year to year. There may be 10 or 100 or even 1,000 times as much flow during the flood season compared to the dry season. So floods are part of this natural cycle. Some rivers flood once a year, when the snow melts or the monsoons come, and others will have peak flows more than once a year. At these times, the river often overtops its channel and spreads out over the low-lying lands which flank the river, inundating floodplains and wetlands, and then recedes again in an endless cycle. Over time, the river migrates across the floodplain. These meander bends grow toward each other until, during a flood, the river takes a shortcut across the small remaining patch of land, carving a new channel. The old sinuous channel is left behind to create a feature called an oxbow lake. Like other floodplain habitats, it becomes disconnected from the river during low-flow periods and reconnected during the high-flow periods. When the flooding river reclaims its floodplain, the fish and other river organisms are able to leave the river channel and enter the floodplain habitat. The swift river within its channel carries a high load of sediment and is often murky. As the river spreads onto the floodplain, it slows down and deposits its sediment. The sunlight penetrates the water, growing aquatic plants that feed the abundant zooplankton and aquatic insects. This is the food for the fish as they move onto the floodplain, where they grow and reproduce. Floodplains can support much greater productivity than their adjacent river, and this productivity maintains the largest freshwater fisheries in the world along the Mekong, Amazon, and other major rivers that still have floods, providing sustenance to tens of millions of people. At the river mouth, the dynamic interaction between fresh and salt water, continually mixed by changing flows and tides, creates the physical conditions that support productive food webs and an impressive diversity of both freshwater and marine life. The